Alrighty, today we're going to give you a brief overview of the properties of water. Alright, water is a molecule. It's composed of 3 atoms. So there's 3 atoms that make up water. You have 1 oxygen and 2 hydrogen. That's why we call it H2O. There's 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. And the water molecule kind of looks like that on the right. Down, where is it at? Here on the bottom. Alright, water is said to be polar. And by polar, it means that it has a slightly negative charge on one end and a slightly positive charge on the opposite end. However, the actual water molecule itself is neutral because it has the same amount of electrons and protons in that in the atom. So the same amount of electrons over here and the same amount as of protons, which gives you a 0 net charge, which means it's a neutral atom, but they do have 2 polar sides. All right, let's talk about hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bonds exist between water molecules. If you look over on the right side at the diagram right over here, you have one water molecule right here attaching to another water molecule. All right, the dotted line shows them bonding. You have the more positive side of the water molecule being attracted to the negative side over here of this water molecule. That is how hydrogen bonds, well, I guess that is a hydrogen bond, and that's how water molecules attach to each other. All right, one thing you need to know about hydrogen bonds is they are very weak when it's just one hydrogen bond. It's a very weak bond, but if you have multiple hydrogen bonds together, all on the same molecule, then that makes that bond really, really strong. So if you just have one, it's weak. If you have several, then it can be strong. And that's just showing what I just discussed earlier, how water molecules interact. There's one molecule on your left right here, and then a free one over here spinning around, and then it will eventually attach like this, negative side to positive side. So the oxygen is attaching to the hydrogen. All right, what are the properties of water? I'm going to run through the properties of water for you real quick. But first, this is just like some extra information about water. At sea level, pure water boils at 100 degrees Celsius and freezes at 0 degrees Celsius. And the boiling temperature of water, it will decrease the higher you go in elevation. All right. So that means, I guess an example is an egg would take longer to boil at high altitudes. So the higher you go, it would take an egg longer to boil. But here goes the properties of water. 1, cohesion, which will cause surface tension. Adhesion, which will cause capillary action. High specific heat. High heat of vaporization. And you need to know that water is less dense as a solid. So when water is in its solid form, it's less dense than when it's in its liquid form. All right, here's an example of cohesion, and pretty much I'll tell you what it is. Cohesion is the attraction between particles of the same substance. So it's pretty much why water is attracted to itself. And I told you earlier that it results in surface tension, which is pretty much just a measure of how strong the surface of the water is. And it kind of produces this film over the water. And it allows bugs and things like that to walk on it or to rest on the surface of the water. So here's an example of cohesion in action. So you get the water like on a lake or a creek or something like that, and you have these bugs that are actually able to walk on the water. Okay? And adhesion, which is pretty much kind of the opposite of cohesion, it's the attraction between 2 different substances. So it's pretty much it's when water makes hydrogen bonds with other surfaces such as like glass, soil, plants, tissues, and cottons, and a couple other things too. But adhesion, I said earlier, pretty much causes capillary action, and capillary action is one of the other properties of water too. So it's pretty much when water molecules can tow each other along, like in a thin glass tube, or inside of a plant that you can't see, or if you take let's say if you spill a liquid on a counter, and you take a paper towel and you hold it at one end and you let one end touch into the water, how you can see the water molecules pretty much pulling themselves up the actual paper towel, kind of like the paper towel is pretty much absorbing it. But that's an example of adhesion. And another example down here is transpiration. It's a process when plants and trees remove water from the soil. So they kind of also absorb it or soak it up. All right, and that's the other example I gave about the paper towel soaking up water. So this is where we'll stop. We'll cover the rest of it in class. Thank you very much.